let's dig into the Purdy conversation as you just referenced. Not much nuance when it comes to the Brock Purdy conversation. Oh. And, you know, bottom line is he is one of the youngest starters in the history of the Super Bowl. He is still clearly cutting his teeth and learning. And last year, he was the darling, like Mr. Irrelevant is the most relevant player potentially in the National Football League. Isn't this interesting? And then obviously we saw how it ended due to injury. Then he comes back, and this is a type of surgery that somebody might lose a few miles per hour off his fastball if we're talking about Major League Baseball here. He comes back. They trade away Trey Lance. Now, all of a sudden, the fact that the team's all in on him places the pressure, as we like to call it in our world, on him and changes, I think, the conversation. Honestly, I've spent so much time trying to figure out what goes through our brains collectively as a sports media here. But is that the difference here, what we're talking about Purdy as opposed to last year? Scott?
Maybe. I think it's just the worst part of our human nature, or what we are at the moment, is that we love you until we get sick of you, and then when we turn on you, then you know it's good luck, right? I mean, and I don't know what he's done to other than have it turn into, on our network and any network where there's conversation about what you are. And then, you know, Cam has had his conversation about, you know, the game manager piece. And listen, I defer to a guy who's been an MVP and played in the Super Bowl. Like, his opinion has merit, right? I feel like he actually has nuanced conversation if you're listening to it, other than just getting mad about, well, what did he say? And I put on the tape. That's what they always say in football, right? You've made your living for many years with the NFL Network. Mm-hmm. When it comes to football, what are these guys that if I've learned anything being around him, it's like, what's the tape show you? And Purdy put some pretty good stuff on tape, often game after game. And then, you know, they got beat by Baltimore and he turned it over some. And then he's like, well, that's it. He sucks. I mean, I don't think that's fair, but we're so often not fair. We're so often not reasonable. We're going to take the most recent thing and turn it into what you are as a player. So if he wins, if they win, yes, then that means he gets to be a guy, right? And if they don't, does that mean it's his fault? Now, if they lose because he plays poorly, and he did play poorly against Baltimore, I'm not saying he didn't, but a lot of people played poorly. Goff was horrible against Baltimore, right? Mm-hmm. Detroit went in there and got destroyed. Worst game they played all year. Who was it against? Oh, that was Baltimore. I'll be damned. Like, they were hard to play against. Kansas City didn't get a point in the second half against Baltimore. Didn't need to, but my point is a lot of people look bad against Baltimore. So I would hope that people allow the performance to speak for itself in terms of where the conversation goes from here. I just have very little faith that that'll happen because it's like there's no he's either an MVP candidate or he's garbage, right? Like, can he just be a good starter, like on a really good team? Is that okay?
But he's also an MVP candidate. I mean, he's one of the finalists. And again,
why'd that happen? You know, why'd that happen though?
Because he performed well enough. I don't know.
And in my opinion, sure. And I think it took Mahomes is Mahomes. Mahomes is in this other category on his own. To me, on the tiers, like, he deserves to be discussed in a certain way. Yeah. And they weren't great. That offense wasn't great. And they were scuffling along. Rich, they lost at home on Christmas Day to the Raiders, and we're going, what are we doing, man? Like, that wasn't Halloween or Thanksgiving. That was Christmas that happened. And so because we got that deep into the season where you didn't have a guy whose numbers just said, I'm the MVP, right? You were looking for, well, who do we have? Well, I don't know. Lamar's numbers aren't awesome, but he's pretty good. Well, San Francisco's great, and he's been pretty good. So it became who's the best player on the best team, which is why I think his name was thrown around in there. I don't necessarily feel like his numbers scream I'm the MVP. I just feel like he was the quarterback of the best team and the one seed in the NFC. So by default, you end up there. But then it gets picked apart for all these other reasons. So I don't know. It's just what we do, man.
No, I know. And then I guess I don't know if it matters in the end, because nobody's sitting here parsing through Tom Brady's first career playoff season right now, because if you remember, I mean, Raiders fans, where we're going to a lot of Raiders fans, would basically be saying, well, they got lucky with an interpretation of the rule that was correct in the snow. He also then got hurt, right? And Bledsoe had to come in there. And we all forget that Super Bowl week leading up to that game against the Rams, Belichick was asked, are you going to put Bledsoe in there after everything anyway? I mean, that was what Brady, and then, in the final Summerall Madden broadcast, the two of them together on Fox, Madden's like, I don't know if you're going to really put the ball in this kid's hand. Just play for overtime. And they didn't. You know what I mean? Like, and so,
of course.
Right. So in many ways, I mean, Purdy has a similar sort of conversation around him. Like, is he really the guy? I mean, you got somebody like Bledsoe that was at least there in New England. Here, I guess what? You sent Lance away. You send Garoppolo away. I don't know if there's a sense of Purdy doesn't deserve what's happening here, even though last year we were all marveling about what he was able to do. It's really weird, man, But
I think, and I said this in the summer when they traded Lance away, and there were people that were aghast that they had done this. And I said, they're telling you what they organizationally, what they think.
Yeah.
We've got our guy. This is him. Purdy's our guy. And that was before they knew, or we knew, or if even he knew. Was like, my arm going to be good enough for me to be some version of what I was last year? And then the answer, I think, was yeah. So they've told you at every step, he's our guy. And so I look, man, this is as big a stage as there is in sport. And so it'll be difficult to either not succeed or fail spectacularly because of that. One way or another, a week from today, that your conversation, all of our conversation, is almost has to be framed with either, well, now he's on this different trajectory, or he's Garoppolo part 2, right? I mean, we don't do nuance well, unfortunately. You can, you just have to be willing to do it. Yeah, just say, well, it's maybe not this, it's maybe not he's Joe Montana or he sucks. It's okay for it to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I guess, or it could be a shootout, right? I don't know. That's
last year
that's
was,
the beauty of it. I know, right? Exactly.
Last year absolutely was.
Hey, listen, Hurts came out of that game last year as he's worth every penny the Eagles are going to have to pay him, and
he was the best quarterback on the field for much of that game.
Correct.
Didn't throw a pick 6, but at the end of it, they lost. So then he played well enough so that at the end of it, even though they lost, it wasn't like, well, they lost because Hurts wasn't good enough.
Correct.
That wasn't what. In the end, everyone's kind of mad about a Bradbury call, even though Bradbury's like, yeah, maybe, I got him. So listen, to me, you asked me, what does it come down to? To me, it's Kansas City's defense they're the biggest thing that is interesting to me. And San Francisco's defense, which for quite a while had a rep for being like pretty rugged, they got eaten alive by both the Packers and the Lions. They better be better against Mahomes, or none of this conversation about Purdy is going to matter at all.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.